Hello, everybody. This is David Sherdewan here. Going to talk with Joe Banner, our lead graphic designer, about some of the work we're doing on the Bone Marshes book. Talk about today focusing on images, placement, and how to sort of tweak them to have a consistent theme and feel with the design elements that Joe's already working on. So, hi, Joe. Morning.
All right. Yep. Not too bad. Thanks. All good. Yeah. Let's crack on. So, the main thing we're going to talk about then was we wanted to go over the images we just talked about. Let's talk about that.
So I'll share my screen. I've got a list of the images here.
Okay. Cool.
Let's see. Can you see that?
No, I can't see that weirdly. I see that you're presenting your screen to everyone, but I'm not seeing the screen share.
I wonder if it's
have you hit the screen share button or have you hit the present to everyone button?
Oh, there we go. I have to go over here and then let's see. Gotcha.
Super duper technicalities.
All right.
Got it? There we go. Way. There it is.
Never gets old.
Yeah. Cool.
Here's our list of sort of art and maps that we've got so far. So I put cover art at the top because I have no idea what we're going to do with that one.
Yeah. Can you share a specific window, by the way? Super minor technical, but it's probably more useful. Wee, there he goes. Okay.
There we go. Yeah.
I think that's better. Much, much better. Perfect. Cool. All right. Good. Okay, that's sorted. So, in fact, I'll jump into the same document. That'll be a bit easier to play around with then. That's our list. Got all sorts of cool stuff on there. Main thing we're looking at then, as you say, is the artwork. Cover art is certainly beyond the bounds of today's chat.
Yep, that's a long way away.
It's getting there, but it's broadly it's certainly a separate task in its own right, which may have some overlap with some of the stuff we're doing today, but yeah, it's certainly going to be its own thing. So that notwithstanding, the other things on the list, our goal for today, as you mentioned before we started rolling, is we've got a sense of the images in kind of rough format ready to go. We have a sense of how big they're going to be, how much space they're going to fill. So let's start blocking out where those are going to go in the content proper. And having done that, that gives us an idea of, in the case, especially in the cases where we've got the imagery to hand or something very close to the final imagery, it starts to give us a good sense of how the final project might actually be looking. And even when we don't, it gives a sense of, oh, okay, so actually it's going to be best, for example, to have 2 columns worth of text. So we probably want to drop this paragraph here and edit that orphan there in order to get everything to fit. And that's more or less the plan for today, isn't it? So where's my details gone?
Okay. I do have placeholder art for everything that's not Alex.
Okay, cool.
And probably 80% of the way there. I want to go through and remake and tweak a bunch of them, but for our purposes today, we can start putting them in.
Yes. And even with the Alex ones, we know it's either half-page illustrations or quarter-page illustrations. Yep. So that's very easy to block in. Yeah. Cool. So let's do that. Let's get started and show you where the document is at this point. And roll it back to the start before I screen share. Well, that's as well. Right. Okay. And now my turn to faff about in Google Hangouts. Screen share, application window, InDesign, share. Boom. That should be it.
All right.
Okay. I haven't made mine the main window, but you've got the tools to do that, I think, haven't you? So if you want to throw me up as the main guy, yeah, do that. Okay, cool. Right. So we have, as we talked about when we weren't recording, but when we did our video conference last week, we've got a document of 47 pages. That is our kind of hard limit for the document size, because it's a 48-page book, and Drive for RPG always uses the last page. So it's 47 pages. That's not going to change. We have, zoom in there, a rough idea of where these are going. Noticing that, like, because we're changing the headings, we haven't got as many of the headings listed here now. So you might want to play around with that a little bit. But that's relatively minor. Let's start with where's my pitch? I'll copy the pitch. Cover art's an easy one to block in, because you don't have to. Overland schedule and overland map. Now these aren't on the Google Doc. These aren't exactly in chronological order or anything, are they? Quite the opposite. We need to work out.
I just made a random list. We'll probably reorganize those.
Yeah, very much so. Let's start with, I kind of want to start chronological order because it always makes sense to work through from start to finish. So out of the Google Doc, which ones do you think are the earliest? Certainly we've got Alex's illustrations are relatively early because they're in the vestry.
Yep.
So that's, the vault cell might be one as well from memory. We mentioned that in here, retrieve the vault cell. So you can see already there's one image already literally in place that I've started to fit in. So that's one example. That's the very first one. That's the unsafe paths, which we kept in the text as a little link. Yep. But the other ones they didn't have a specific place to go because they weren't pulled out at that point. So let's see. Vault cell, adventure pack, marsh rations, torches.
I think, yeah, safe paths. I'll make a list. Do you want to order these or does it not really matter?
It might be useful to keep them in order, just for what we're doing today. Or we've just bold them as we go. So let's see. I think the very first one is probably this vault cell. This quarter-page vault cell is going to go here. So quarter of an image. Oops. Easiest way to do it is full page. And then make that 25%. It isn't, because that doesn't work right. I always forget that part. There we go. That is a rough block. I mean, again, we touched on this a little bit last week, I think, but what we're really working with these sort of half-page and quarter-page illustrations isn't so much the full page, it's the margins. So actually, this block here, which I've highlighted, let's just put a little block around it. That block there, that's roughly 25% of the entire page. But as you can see, it goes over the margins somewhat. So realistically, what we're looking at is 25% of this, which is closer to that. It's even slightly less than 25% because the image will probably fit within the margins that we've already established. So I can align that to the bottom. It's roughly like that. There we go. Just taking off the guides, turning off the guide. So obviously those guides are the baseline guides to keep everything lined up. And the purple ones are our column guides. So that is actually realistically what the vault cell space will sort of encompass. And when we're working on like content and thinking about, well, how can we maybe rearrange some of this text to best fit the space, we're sort of working with that block in mind rather than anything else. With something like this, it's not such a big deal because it's relevant to what's going on here. You've got the map above, like referenced here specifically. So that one's slightly different. It's slightly more in context. But here, the intent is we've got that as a bit of kind of maybe filler material, but also relevant material, because you want to know what the vault cell looks like when you're describing it to the players as part of the hook. So it's an important thing to go on that page. Going back to the original design intent of having all the content, all the relevant content on the page for the GM and in some cases even the players to kind of examine. So that's our vault cell right there. Next port of call is probably Um,
I'm really seeing the fonts and the emphasis choices that you made earlier coming together. That looks awesome to see it on the page like that. That's cool.
yeah, you can like we're definitely at that sort of stage where we're going to start editing the content to fit the style rather than the other way around now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We want to make sure that stuff like this is tidied up a little bit. Although, of course, we've got kind of a question there for all three of those quests because they all have that similar idea. There's one, there's two, and yeah, there's three. It's literally the same overlay.
Yep.
I think even in one of the drafts, I might have said like we could call them all like running this,
or just say run part 3 as a one shot.
Yeah, that's a good idea actually.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
Yeah, stuff like that I think is going to tip this thing over the edge.
Yeah, I mean,
really clean.
Yes, exactly. This kind of goes tit for tat as well, because when you're making a heading, you don't want it to be too big. You know, if the heading is quite long, then it's not as easy to say. It's not as easy to keep in your mind. So there's an argument for saying that, you know, that content is better off put elsewhere. To take this as an extreme example, it's like, do you need to reiterate that part 2 is retrieve the vault cell, or is this enough? Right? Like that's language for you. It's good to get, in my mind, it's good to get the message down as quickly and as clearly as possible. So, you know, do you need to reiterate here that part 2 is called retrieve the vault cell, or is that information best put somewhere else, somewhere where it's going to be more clearly understood on a more regular basis?
Yep.
So yeah. But we've got, so Heart of the Marshes, I feel like we should have something here. We've got space for full page. We've got quite a lot of places where there's space for full page or larger imagery. That could be a map. It could be an actual illustration. There's also, it could be a couple of illustrations potentially. There's all sorts of potential for those. But I find that a bit like how if you've got an odd paragraph where it's like an orphan, where like if, for example, this page finished there and like that much was left over, it looks a bit odd. It's nice to have sections, which generally is this heading size, the page title size, starting on the left hand side, and to continue to be consistent with that. So that means that these pages tend to have a lot more space, and that brings us to the bestiary actually, which of course has quite a lot of imagery involved with it. Here's a good example of a tricky orphan bit of content, which is these items for the Trello here. First of all, let's make sure these are looking exactly as they should look, which is broken up like that and as a proper numbered list. There, that's better. Right. So that's the formatting sort of down pat. And I think in our this page is not a million miles away from the Kickstarter page we used as an example when we were building our point of content, our point of sale, I guess you call it. We had the big picture of the bird on the right hand side here, and what we've got going on here is this kind of knock-on effect. You've got the marsh creatures fill up that much space, but then the tree ant takes up that bit. So you want the tree ant there, then the muckers, because of that, don't have enough space. So the mucker brute ends up on the next page, and then likewise the trailer. So it all knocks on. So what would be a really good way of using imagery is to try and break that up a little bit so that the right sections are starting on the right page. In a perfect world, you kind of want, and again, coming back to the initial brief, you kind of want to have, I would think, your marsh creatures would take a page, your muckers would take a page, and your silver automatons would take a single page. I mean, almost, I did that. Page, is that right? Yes, that's better. Right. And then fix this back to the proper. There we are. You would almost have something, so that fixes that, and you can see, oh, I wanted 2 columns, not 3. That's better. Yeah. So there you can see that this really sort of fills the space a little more effectively.
So it looks like our marsh creatures are what's pushing us over.
Yeah, at the moment, but because we haven't put any images in, I don't want, none of this is really set in stone yet, I would say. We're sort of playing around with how it looks without images, but we really want to get some pictures in here. It'd be silly not to have images in our bestiary. So let's work on that. Let's get some proper blocks and let's keep this going as text leading through one column to the next over these 3 pages, and go back to your documents. So quarter page illustrations of, we've got pretty much all of them. The Swamp has one.
Yep, I think the only ones that aren't being illustrated are the common ones, like a tree ant, a flame elemental, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the cattail bandit also doesn't get one, although the cloak does, or even the barrel of the freshwater. So even there's some relevant, interesting like imagery we could include in that highlights why these bandits are different from other bandits. But let's leave those for the sake of space, because I feel like we're going to run out of space a little bit otherwise. We've got the first one is probably the Swamp. Yeah,
I wonder if we'll just have to do a full spread for each category of creatures.
Yeah, remember that, you know, this content is, these images is something we can easily incorporate elsewhere, i.e. on the pages where we first encounter something like a Swamp. That'd be a very easy place to put it. If I put that there, no, that's not going to work. See, already we're running into a bit of trouble, because the natural place to put the Swamp image is probably before you encounter it, but that's not going to make sense. So we're going to have to do, you're going to have to put it there, top left here.
Yeah, but then it's on a different page.
But then it's on the wrong page. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, you can see already we start to run into finicky stuff. Let's see.
We can mix up the order. It doesn't have to be alphabetical, especially if it's on a spread.
True, but it is a bit sort of, it doesn't feel right, does it? It doesn't feel right to not have it alphabetical, especially if this is one of the only ones we need to change. I think it probably makes much more sense for it to be alphabetical and to keep that consistency. Okay, as a potential idea, here's what we're going to do. We're going to, first of all, we're going to make sure that the image, there are 2 ways you can insert the image in InDesign. It could be like kind of a separate frame in its own right, and stuff just kind of works around it, which is basically how it works in Word or whatever, or any Word program. Or you can build it in such a way that the frame is actually a part of the text itself, the kind of the text frame, and there's a frame inside the frame effectively. So if I were to make a frame, what I just did there is I just made a frame, I copied it, just Control V, and then I want to paste it in. And this is it here. This is the frame I've just copied. We make sure this is our 25% size or thereabouts. So it's going to be like, and then, so it's a small difference, but it's relevant, because what's going to happen now is make sure that image is, whoops, that's better. Yeah, that's that. You can see that blue box there is about the size we want the Swamp to be. Now, what's going to happen now, the difference of what's going to do now is if I press enter, that whole frame will move with, it'll be difficult to push it along, but it will follow the line of where the Swamp stuff is. So it'll all keep it together, which is useful.
I see.
Let's make sure this, I'm not sure why is this thing not showing its structure? No, it's not structure. Which one it is? I had this problem last time. I switched it then. Extras. Yeah, there we go. That's better. Frame edges, right. So now we can see that X filling that space nicely.
Gotcha.
Because we don't want that to have a black background necessarily. We don't necessarily want it to look like that in the final product. So I don't want to put black borders around that don't actually have part of the content. But yeah, when we're working on it, that is our sort of rough image size for the Swamp. And then for the Mucker Warrior, spawn first? No, just Mucker Warrior, Mucker Brute. Also, the Brute should probably come first, I just realized. Because again, it's alphabetical.
I'd rather order it by evolution.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yep. So we got the muckfish first.
Yeah, then the vector of infection, and then comes from there. Yeah, gotcha. That makes sense. So we have the warrior comes first. Sort of weirdly push this down.
This is a pointless aside, but when I made up the term mucker, it comes from a common insult, F with an M. But I looked it up, and it's actually a real word that I'd never heard before. And then I had to do a bunch of research to make sure it wasn't accidentally offensive.
It's a very, very archaic colloquial English slang, which means it might be English, it might be Australian, or it might be both. But actually, it's a positive one. It's like me old mucker, me old pal. Might be something that someone from like 1940s England might have said.
Yeah.
It's almost in that kind of Warhammer turned orcs into cockneys kind of thing. It's almost like the muckers might call each other that. It's a strange thing, but yeah.
Yeah, I never knew it was a real word. That's so funny.
It's so weird, isn't it? Sometimes the things you find. Right, there's the brute. So the brute's going to go in there. Again, we're going to... Oops. Yeah. I mean, it's getting there, right? In as much as the quarter images, we might... I'm assuming that Alex's images as well, they're on like a plain white background as a rule, right? Like,
I believe so.
Yeah.
He's doing like a rough sketch.
In his kind of... Because that's his pretty good... That's his style, isn't it? I like that style of like individual monster that you could use as like... You could print it out and use it as I know he does. For characters instead of models like paper miniatures. So that's my expectation of what's coming in. And that could give us some options, because that'd be the sort of thing that'd be quite easy to resize. For example, we might do something like this, right? And then if I center that, can I actually just center this on the page? I forgot to physically move it. I don't think I can easily, but what I can do is we essentially talk about it filling a space like that, but it doesn't have to get stretched to that space. It might, if I find some kind of, I don't know, like a orc or something. And this is obviously not going to go in the final product.
Right.
But orc. 5e, yeah. Where's that old 5e? It's that classic image of like a 5e. Oh my god, image search. That's no.
Don't look, wizards. Don't look.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, avert your eyes, wizards. Nothing personal, Mike. Right. So if I were to grab that and it's gone. Stupid thing. Yeah. Give me the image. There we are. Right, that's better. Right. Right, there we go. This is a good example of how image processing can work in Google Docs. This is our picture of an orc. Now, it's filled the space to like maximize the space, but you don't have to play it like that. You can make it so that it actually scales to suit that way, or you can fit the frame to the content, or you can fit the content to the frame, or you can where is it? Content aware fit. Is that the new one? No. Basically, you can squeeze the content as you see fit. This is not the best of examples, but it's not a terrible one either. This is what I'm getting at, is that the size of the frame, although it should be relatively close, doesn't have to be. So a quarter page illustration gives us plenty of options to have something like that. I'm thinking actually this is a better example on the spawn, because the spawn being a small like leech-like character. We got like a little gross leech character I can throw in there somewhere. Like
the spawn's not going to be one of the creatures.
Oh no, you're right. It's the warrior that comes.
The warrior and the brute.
Yeah. Okay, my bad. So probably this same kind of image would fit this space.
I see what you're saying, though. That is.
You see what I'm getting at? Yeah, in that some images, some monsters aren't necessarily going to fill the space as a portrait, even though we're using that as kind of the default stance. Humanoids generally will, and most of these creatures are quite humanoid, so there is that. You know, the brute, the warrior, and the swarm are all kind of mud-related humanoids. So that is definitely a factor, but we have got options there nonetheless. So let's take out these. Whoops. There we go. That's the other thing to get used to, is this outline in red is what I'm actually deleting, but the frame remains. So you can end up with empty frames if you're not careful. Nonetheless, this gives us some good ideas for how this content might fit the space. Let's keep going. So we've got Mucka Warrior, Mucka Brute have been added. Swarm's been added. And then we have the Anomalo, the Trilo, the Humano, and the Archaeo. Interesting. Yeah, let's put them all in.
It's cool that you can block off space like this. That's really
This is where, like, this is a solution. This isn't the solution, if that makes sense. When people are like, well, do you want to use this or Word or Affinity or whatever? Like, this is a solution towards doing that, but it's certainly not the be all and end all. But once you're used to doing something like this, it's hard to go back. And this is a pretty useful, this is a pretty elegant solution towards keeping that content in, I would think. Because by blocking all this content off, you're sort of future-proofing yourself.
Yep.
You're saying, well, look, you know, we'll fall back to whatever, but we know that roughly this image is going to go in this space. And you can see how this would work in magazine design as well, of course, where you have just got like, okay, well, someone's putting their 200-word article in or 2,000-word article or whatever.
Yep.
Okay. It also kind of lets us take a look at the content as written and think like, well, this isn't ideal. This is not really, you know, because actually looking at it, looking where the text is in relation to not, like if I zoom out a bit, it looks jumbled now, doesn't it? It looks a bit too jumbled up, I would say, to have the images that size in that order. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, David, but I'm not so fussed about using, say, the image of the Archaeo, the Archaeo, on the Archaeo page specifically, because I know it's referenced elsewhere, and I know that would be useful. It is good to have it next to where the Archaeo is described, but I know that the Archaeo is kind of relevant in other sections as well. So...
Well, and
say they're not necessarily just the Archaeo. Obviously, all the monsters get a shout out somewhere in various hexes. So yeah, well, what do you think about that?
So this brings up an interesting question of image captions.
Ooh.
So I'm okay with spreading out the artwork because a lot of it is, you know, focused on the monsters and some of the items. So the areas will be bare if we don't spread the art around. But I would like to have captions under some images to say, you know, this is an Archaeo, as a reminder to the player what it looks like. But I also feel like if you're going to have a couple images captioned, you might need to caption all of them.
Certainly a certain type of image. So, for example, all of your hexes or all of your monster illustrations or something of that ilk.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense to have them all done or none of them. If captions are a big deal, or even a small deal, you know, it's your product. It's not a big deal either way. I do like the, I'm thinking of the Clay That Woke did it well, but it's also like the kind of that classic Alice in Wonderland storybook mentality where it's mostly prose with some very nice big pull-out images with a really relevant caption underneath them.
I was thinking, I'd love to write the captions for some of these images. That would be cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of where I was coming at with the big Archaeo illustration that we use stock photos for, where the caption is effectively what the Archaeo sort of talks in this gibberish, but it's not actually gibberish. It's like code. It's asking questions based on things it doesn't really know about. And and putting some of those questions next to the RKO was a really good way of highlighting that, I think. Like, oh, okay, cool, it's a bird that speaks gibberish. Like, you get that sense from the image straight away, but so long as that content is next to where the RKO like text is written, this stuff here, you'll get a sense of why it's doing that. It's seeking to question and record, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of what I'd be getting at with that. So like the captions don't have to be like, this is a whatever. Like they could be whatever format you like.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to put some lore and flavor.
Yeah. It lets us sort of go off script a little bit. But that doesn't necessarily, I would say that sort of outline is not very compatible with inline images. I think that what tends to, I'm not saying it's always going to be the case, but what will often happen, especially in this, which is quite a text heavy document anyway, is you end up overloading with too many pictures and the text kind of gets lost in the background. It goes back to the idea of white space, where you want to make sure everything is nicely balanced. And what you'll tend to get is if you have a huge single page spread with a nice caption, no matter how nice the picture is, and then you have some inline images as well, unless they're very basic images, like fillers, like scrolls or skulls or something like that, something generic, then it's like, oh, suddenly there's too many images and not enough relevant text. So there's definitely a balance to be found of that. That being said, if we were to do something like that, if we take this lot out, this is going to take a sec because it's trying to recalculate like the whole script as I do it, and the trigger as well, and spawn. We've got an odd line there. Yeah, that's back to roughly where we were. Yeah. So if we were to then to its own page, I mean, what's interesting is that when we're actually looking at the text, the one that feels like it needs, one that feels like these two are quite nice and they fill the space quite effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this page, the tree end notwithstanding, which feels like you could do with the bestiary image here. If you're going to have a single image with a spread, it's probably related to the marsh creatures in general because as close to as possible, unless we move the muckers and the silver and the general creatures around. Sure, I want to do that either. Or we just push this down, so we could do this. Get rid of that. And that moves it to there. Get rid of that. Which moves everything down to there. Point of reference, that's, yeah, we've still got plenty of space. See, page, our content still only reaches up to page 40, so we still have wiggle room while we're doing this. So we could do let me see. Do this. Get up there, use. Try and squeeze that last bullet point in. Yeah. The dropped torch. Would that be capitalized? There's a status effect. I can't remember if, no, it wouldn't, because Nave doesn't really have status effects like that. So you're just
I wouldn't worry about it.
describing the narrative. Yeah.
Plain English whenever possible.
Yeah. And let's make that a numbered one as well. That's better. Right, it's there. That's fairly clear. That's supposed to be a 1d6 roll. Right, yeah. So good. Cattail Bandits now on their own thing. Bone Swarm's there, Fire Elemental's there. Now, I wonder, given the options we've got available to us, if we do use one of the Cattail Bandit ones here after all, because it's one of the more relevant ones. So the Barrel of Freshwater, for example, could definitely go in here. There's a bit of an irony there, which I quite like as well, in that you've got the Barrel of Water is like, Cattail Bandits want it. The Fire Elemental obviously is anathema to it. So there is a bit of a link there, which could work quite nicely anyway. And it suits our needs. So if we have this, that pink line is halfway across the page, you see. So I can quite confidently think that is going to be about our...
Would you want to put it below Fire Elemental, so it's next to the Cattail Bandit one, or is that going to break up?
No, it could too. In fact, that would be a nice way if you angle it and size it correctly, i.e. make sure it fills up roughly that much space. It's a good way of pushing the Swamp stuff to the next page. So you could have that. And then we know we've got an image for the Swamp. So let's also do that there. Again, this Swamp image could fill up this space here. Note I'm not kind of putting the images in line anymore because I can't be bothered. It's like we get the idea, like we're sort of getting there. It's useful when you're blocking stuff out, but you don't have to do it every time. So we've got that. Now we have this kind of, this isn't slightly annoying, is all of this space here, all of this. We have this space is kind of crying out for something, but I'm not sure what yet. I don't want to put another picture in. I feel like that might be a little bit of an unbalancing thing. I mean, something I've done in my Patreon adventures in the past, when I've had like this almost gradient, do you see what I mean, where there's like a line going diagonally from the bottom left-hand corner of the spread to the top right, is you put in a texture or a kind of a background image which fills that space and kind of helps draw your eye along it. I'm not sure if that's really necessary here because we do have some images we can use. So I'm not sure. We're gonna have to sit on that for a minute, and we'll come back to poor El Treant and his little spacey column a bit later. Mucker's stuff, right? We could now have a space to quite happily stick in here. Now, this might be a full page image. I'm not saying it has to fill this gap. It's just that we'll use that for reference. But that gives us quite a bit of carte blanche to put a couple of images or one big image and an associated caption related to the muckers there. Yeah, it's a shame we haven't got a good piece of imagery to use as a stopgap for muckers. But that's okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
What would be a good thing we could throw in? I mean, I can put in our orc jobby again. There he is. Way. You get a sense. But what I'm also trying to get at, in other words, is like if you have him there, but then we also had like a smaller picture of the brute knocking around here, right?
Yeah, it'd be too much.
It starts to really unbalance because it's like, hang on, you've got one huge picture on that side. Why is there another picture there? If it's a seesaw or like a weight, like scales of justice, the scales sort of thing. If you're looking at scales, it's like, hang on, you've got, and images is one metric and text is another. You kind of want those metrics to balance. And in a weird way, too much imagery can make that feel unbalanced. As soon as I take that out, it looks and feels balanced. It's like, right, one big image that sums up. This doesn't have to be one big image. This could be, because we've got our, what is it, half page or quarter page? Half page of the locations. Okay, cool. And it's quarter pages for everything else. So we've got a nice quarter page there. So this guy's going to fill in like used as intended. He'll fill in like that, which still might not look too bad. That's actually kind of cool, especially if we did something like this and we wrote a little caption underneath that was like,
yeah, I could even add in a couple bits of flavor or talk about stuff, add another paragraph of text if we need it. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Look, so you we can put captions in, or like you do that kind of nice storybook-esque one where it's in the bottom right. I like doing that. That's one of my personal favorites. So you have that there, and you have that like that. There you go.
Yeah, the more opportunities to add flavor and content, the better.
Exactly.
That's kind of why I want to finish this layout and then
start getting start prettifying it. Yeah. This is it. This is absolutely it.
For Keith to edit.
Yeah. Get you back to where you should be. Out there. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we'll find out something to fill that space up. I like that.
Yeah. Okay, and let's do the same thing for the Sylpher. I think for Muckers and the Sylpher especially, because they're your unique creatures, I think it's really, really relevant to have some singular image or a couple of strong images that really sum up what's going on with them. So we can let's work with this idea. I know we've only got the quarter images in the bag, but let's leave them with like these larger images here to put aside, a bit like what we had in the Kickstarter concept, and see where we're at with the illustrations. I think that could work really well. A bit of edit there as well while I think about it. Okay, cool. What do you think about that so far? How are we looking?
I like that. I like the idea of having a couple extra, paragraphs of text potentially to work with and add in.
Yeah.
Because I've been playtesting Bone Marshes for about 6 months now, and I've got a lot of stuff I'd like to add in.
Okay.
Room. So.
Right. So yeah, the opposite is going to be true. There are going to be opportunities where we will have more room. Right. So let's crack on. We're wasting time a bit here. So we've done regions. Now regions is a funny one. Again, I almost want to use. I know we don't have like infinite numbers of images here, but I really kind of want to start our first hex on. I delete that on the left-hand side, right? I know we've got like multiple images here, so we aren't like, we kind of front-loaded our images a little bit, but I think there's quite a lot we could do here because this table could probably do with having a bit more space to it. There's also hexes and stuff I think we need to start fitting in now, don't we? So let's start doing that. I'm going to leave that space there to play with and then start with the forest. So we need every one of these hexes, forest, wetlands, etc., has got a corresponding hex, hasn't it?
Yep.
So we need to start throwing those in. And I'm just going to get the folder with all of those bits in. Images. We got them. Where are they gone? Have you got them all? Oh, there's forest. Yeah. They're all in the Bone Marshes drive folder, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah.
I can pull it up in the images.
That's okay. I've got it here. Okay. I found the folder. Yeah.
I need to clean up a lot of these. That's what I'm going to start doing. But I wanted to touch with you and see what we're keeping, what we're not.
Well, pretty much every hex has its thing, doesn't it? So here's our forest coming in.
Yep.
So again, let's follow the rough format of the first part we had was that this would sort of fit this space over here. That was the thing we were playing around with circa the Kickstarter.
Yeah, be in the same place for every page flip, so you can easily.
Yeah, that's the desire. Yeah. See, what's happened here is because you've got your image isn't quite weird. You've got like a white border around the image, so it's not filling the space effectively. Oh.
So that's another good question is, should I have transparency in any of the images I get to you, or would you?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Transparency. Yeah, you've got them all as PNGs, transparent. That is perfectly fine. I think what we might do with the images, the other thing is though, but when you do have those images, I'm going to have to open this in Photoshop real quick. Let me show you what I mean. So go to that. Let's put this back in.
Right. Yeah, show me what format I should be delivering these in.
PNG is fine. The only difference between what you've got at the moment and what is probably most desirable is making sure that there is no excess space. So do you see this blue border around here?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the problematic because we're not using that. So if I try and shrink this to fit a space,
oh,
because I want this to fit this space, don't I? I can do it. I've just got to mess around with it. So it's best practice is to make sure it hasn't got any excess space around it. All I've got to do, it's not a big job, but obviously I don't want to be doing it for every hex if I can avoid it. So I'm just going to load it into Photoshop. I don't have to share it. Load it into Photoshop real quick. Select it, crop it, save it. So my local copy now is saved. Now what's really interesting is, as I've done that, you probably saw this little warning mark appear. Modified click to update. So because I've modified the file, it's actually, this is the new version of the file. It's now resized to fit that space. So that is now the actual PNG file. It fits the space exactly. And you see I've got this little auto fit toggle up here. That's super useful for stuff like this because all I need to do is align it to the bottom left, shrink it down to match that bar there. And there we go. That is our hex. Boom. Move the wetlands on to the next page, and we're done.
I can definitely make sure to deliver those without any extra space. Yeah.
So that is our main thing. Well, we're going to go through these anyway, and as you can see, it doesn't take me long to do it. So there might be some. Huh?
Here's a question for you, Joe. So earlier you talked about I should deliver the images without labels so that you can add your own.
Yes, that's true.
What about on these hexes? That's a lot of labels.
Yeah, I mean, on hexes like this, I think we can get away. The main factor is in the early stages when I asked you to do that, we still hadn't absolutely defined our font. We were pretty close, but we hadn't sort of started in earnest. So that the question was still there, hadn't been 100% answered. I think now, so long as we make sure that the hexes are designed in a way that's consistent, having the text there is not an issue. Otherwise, you're right. What I've actually got to do in InDesign, which is not prudent, is to make a fresh text box, write the letter A. It's in box text for some reason. That's useful. Write the letter A, make it size 21, do that, and stick it on top of there. And it doesn't even work right because everything's overlapping. It's not prudent. It's not ideal. But I'd rather do that in a way than have this hex text, clash with whatever else we've used. Right. So I think because you've used Algrea sans for the A, B, R, and Q here, it's not, if I was to write the letter A here, they're not the same. They're similar, but they're not quite the same, are they?
No.
And it is probably prudent to keep those the same. If anything, I'm wondering if, for the sake of building the hexes, it's worth taking them into something like Illustrator, which would mean we're sort of trading off on the hands drawn effect, but we can scale them up and down a lot more to suit. But I haven't decided that beyond a shadow of a doubt. The main thing, though, based on that original question, is to make sure that the fonts are consistent. If you've got the right fonts looking consistent, and by consistent, I mean they should really be the same as heading size 3. They should be Algrea sans, they should be bold, and they don't have to be 16 point because we might resize them, but they should certainly be something that isn't too out of click with that. And it's the same with like Meadows here. This Meadows text isn't the same as River Hills. We want to avoid that where possible.
You said it's Algrea?
It's Algrea. It's the font we've used. Algrea, Algrea, I guess it is. You can see it up in the top left here.
Okay. Yep.
Which I can't.
So what I was going to do is I was going to make all the maps using HexKit, export them in high resolution, and add the labels in Photoshop.
Yes, that seems fine. So you can absolutely do that, and just so long as that Photoshop image has got the, if in doubt, send me the Photoshop image, and I can, because I can import that even easier. So a PSD can be placed into these as easily as any image can. Plus, that gives me a bit more carte blanche to edit the text if there's any like odd things where it hasn't quite set up right or whatever. So if anything, having the PSDs to hand is more useful. Than having anything else.
And do you want me to? I'll label the hexes for the hex maps. Do you still want to do the labels for the other maps?
No. If you're, again, so long as it's all consistent with this font formally here, I'm happy for you to do those labels. Because it's otherwise it's like we're making work for ourselves. If you're making the hexes, you might as well make the hexes, right? I mean, notwithstanding if HexKit has a problem or Photoshop has a problem with putting that font in a way that fits, but I can't see how it would. You know, how much difficulty can it be? And besides which, if you've got the PSD saved, you can send them over to me. I've got Photoshop too. We can just tweak them as needed. It's not a big deal. So I think that's probably the best way we'll move forward, is that as you're developing the hexes and you've got all that information to hand, throw it into Photoshop. If time's a factor, I don't mind doing that. That's definitely part of my remit. I'm happy to kind of have those images and have a Word file of all the references and just crack on and do that. But
well, I'd be happy to do it. I would enjoy it. It'd be nice to watch Supernatural in the background and do a bunch of work.
Yeah, exactly. So
if I can derail us for a second, I do have something I want to run past you. So since I got you,
yeah, go for it.
So here's a placeholder for the keep, right?
Yes. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, cool.
So
is this in HexKit?
Yeah, this is HexKit.
Nice.
Still needs a lot of work, I think. But the question I'm wondering is, how do you want to label these?
Yeah.
Do you want, like, right off the side, or do we want to add like an arrow pointing to it? It'd be nice to have like a universal or consistent way to do that.
Yeah. First of all, how many labels have we got? Remind me. We've got what?
For that
5 or 6? Yeah.
Let me pull it up.
Yeah.
Duplicate. Go back. And this is a slightly out of date version, but it's got all the nice hyperlinks. So I always use it.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the one.
I use this for playtesting.
Nice.
So we've got B, S, G, T, H, P. So yeah, we got about 6.
Yeah. Okay. How about we make the labels into larger hexes? So the pullouts are exactly that. They're B, G, S, T, and so on. So have you got that file in a way that I can share it? Is it in, where is it?
It's in the images. It's keep.png.
Perfect. I gotcha. I see. So you've got a labeled one there. Yeah. Okay. Let me grab that. Download it. Come here, use.
Yeah, I did like a really crappy labeling job at Google Docs, but it just did not look very good. So I wanted to nail down a
theme, a style.
Theme,
yeah, definitely.
And I can apply that to all the maps I'm doing.
I'll stop sharing that. There I am. And start sharing that. Right. If you want to make mine the main screen for a second, so
easier. You are. You're live.
Cool. How about we have an image, a hex. To get the labeled one's useful for me to reference it. So P is up here. How about we were to do that? Yeah, something like that. Or that color. And so, yeah, and regular point, centered, throw it in there. Come here. Oh. Oh wow, the resolution's huge on this. That's interesting.
Yeah, HexKit exports in really high, nice resolution.
Cool. Oh yeah, blimey, I've only just noticed what we're zoomed in at. Okay. That is fine. That is fab. And bold. So the stroke needs to go from like 5 to like 50. There we go. We're not even that. Actually, it's not that bad at all. It's a starting point, not like the be-all and end-all. I'm not necessarily saying it's just going to be a plain white hex, but something, the pull-out, the overlay is like that. So P was there, G is there. Actually, let me get this lot into a manage. Right. So yeah, there we go. P's there, G's there, B's there, B's up here. I know we're obviously partially obscuring the map itself.
But that's okay if it's clear.
Indeed, because of course, something like this last one here is ideal, isn't it? Where it's like, it's slightly obscured, but it's on the corner. So that one was S. And then this one is B. Oops. And that's H. Oops. And is G. And that's C. Because the other reference, the idea is the reference throughout is that you've got this kind of alphabetical idea. So to specifically pull this out in a bit more detail and do a zoom in, I think is a nice combination. I think it leans into the kind of the context we already have. And I think that's really cool. I'd like to do that more. So that's my thinking.
I'm down with
that. Something like that.
So,
and then it doesn't take any more excess space. The referencing, we don't have to like retell the references. We don't have to like caption this particular image. And yeah, I think that gives us a bit more flexibility overall. Yeah.
Nice and clean too. I like
that. Yeah, exactly. And I think that the clean look, I mean, we might now style this. The way in which we might style this reflects on a couple of things. It reflects on how the rest of the hexes are starting to look, which is that kind of sketchy style. It reflects on this sort of theme of this kind of being Azimex notes. Like, I think that feels like the kind of the main setting, as it were, for how this stuff is being presented. That's T. And Alex, yeah, Alex's drawings, the hex map stuff, the hex kit stuff, and the general kind of theme of this being Azimex notes will kind of detail like whether we give these kind of like a sketchy hex outline or something else. There we go. That one's B. Let's reference these because I'm pedantic. That one's G.
Do you want to keep white and black and keep it simple?
I mean, I do like that, but no, I'm not. I don't have to. My heart's not set on it. Let's take this image, right? Let's save this. Let's throw this back into InDesign.
I was thinking we keep the white and black because it'll contrast with all the colors of the map. So I don't think anything in my map is just white and black.
No. So what you're saying is to keep that means it's a nice, obvious pullout.
Yeah, it's really clear.
I've got
clarity is better than style in this case.
got P twice. What have I missed? S. It's got renamed S by mistake. Right. Yeah. So yeah, the whole way of pulling out content is the same. Should be. There we go. Back into InDesign. Yeah. Right. Let's find the keep. Buffs, meadow. I can keep. Here it is. For the sake of simplicity, we're going to push it to the next page. We're going to kind of draw a line under the editing we've done, which again is a good reason why we try and do this in order. But
yeah.
And let's throw the central spire onto its own page as well, so that's nicely out of the way. Here we go. Here's our content on the Sunken Keep. Quite happily fills a single page. In this case, it's not as long as Forests. Where's Forest all the way back up here? Forest has got a lot more stuff to it.
Yep.
Which might get squidged up a little bit. Stuff like this will get squidged up, but we know from previous kind of playing around that there is quite a lot of ways. Ideally, the encounters becomes a table. We play around with this a little bit more. But anyway, Sunken Keep is a little bit smaller. But what we can do is grab that keep PSD, go in here. Again, so it's not so much. Oh no, it's weird actually. It's filling the space in a really weird way. Let's make this a bit smaller. Oh, what's going on? Come on. Oh god, it's really struggling because the image is so big. Oh god. Come on, you can do it, buddy.
What resolution do you want these to be, actually, now that I'm asking?
Well, like, honestly, the bigger the better. Like, actually, it's super cool that it's throwing them in at this high resolution because, like, you do just want them to be as high quality as possible. It gives you more options. I'd rather that you had them as high quality resolution images that we stick in. And the worst case scenario might be that there's like an issue with drive-through RPG, but that's fine. That's we can bring that down. We can de-resolve that as needed. Right. Let me just make sure this bit's smaller first. Oh my god, it's huge. It's brilliant. That's too small. Okay. It's roughly that space. There we go. There it is.
Nice.
There we go. There it is. That's what it actually looks like. So we've got, because it's square, we know we've got that much space to fill.
Yep.
We still want to keep it bottom right because that's going to be our kind of format for the hex areas. And you can see, like, I suppose the only other thing you might do is, color code the hexes based on the main hex map. Right? Like, going back to, you might make them all that one color like the forest one is. Maybe.
Oh, huh. Maybe. I don't know. I think the white really pops.
The white's okay. Yeah. Yeah. I might make them a bit, the individual pullouts, I might make a bit larger now. And I can do that quite easily in Photoshop. I'm alt tabbed into Photoshop now.
You mean make the hexes larger?
That's it. The label hexes, not the hexes themselves. But I want to make the labels a bit bigger, given that the image itself is smaller.
Right.
So this isn't so much it must be this font size. It's more like, oh, well, I want to make sure eyeball it actually looks okay. So if I should now be able to there it is. Is that the arrow? Bloop. All done. Just a little bit bigger. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm pretty happy with that.
I mean, the only other thing I can think of is
white space is annoying.
We make sure all the maps have that white background, and I get my wife or someone to actually draw like, a sketchy diagram that says a line to P. This is where Puddin' Jack is. But that's not going to be easily readable. It'll look cool, but
No,
it won't be easy.
no, I don't think that's a good idea because the idea is it's P for Pudding Jack, and that's why we have those icons with the letter on them.
Yep.
So that it should be as clear as possible. Oh,
Yep.
that does make me think though that we would do that, which actually is a bit more beneficial. The other thing I'm sort of playing with, I haven't set it as like every heading of this size does it, but many of these like section titles, when they start on a page like that, I really want them to kind of span the entire page so that, you get that instead. But because sometimes we're using this title, this heading size in line, I don't want to do it across the board. But for something like this, whoops, there we go. For something like this, that's looking pretty good now. We come back to this idea that we had in the prototype of pulling out the hex titles to make it a bit more obvious.
I was just about to mention that.
That's now we're really coming to that sort of stage, aren't we? Where this needs. I'm not saying we do it in square brackets. I'm just doing it as for simplicity's sake. Yeah, because that actually is not doing it other than as kind of almost like code, isn't it? That doesn't. Putting the square brackets around doesn't directly show. Oh yeah, that's going to be that. But of course, we had hexes at one point. We actually had little hexes in front of all these titles, like that.
Yeah.
And we even had them color coded at some point. So we had something like that. Now it's starting to look.
I like that idea of putting the hex symbol next to each title, and then we have the hex label on the map.
Yeah,
I like that.
That's starting to look the part. Now our options are a bit limited in that. Like because it's a black hex, I almost want to reverse the colors. I'll just do it for P for now because I've got it to hand. So turn off stroke, make that black, make the text white. Oops. I may use. There we go.
Huh.
Because then it's like black hex to black hex.
Right.
It's simple. I don't want to be like, I know we toyed with this idea originally where we had like green hexes and like the green first letter. I'm not in love with that idea. I think it's a bit messy. And I'd rather have like, if you see a hex here, then look for the hex with the corresponding letter and keep it a bit more monochrome. That way as well, the color that you've actually got in the maps and the hexes, especially on stuff like this, where it's not just like, for that one, it's like that's pretty self-explanatory, right? But like something like this, you really want to try and draw more attention to what's going on here. So I don't want to have like loads of overlaid colors in this section in the text. I don't want like this one to be blue and this one to be green and whatever, because I feel like that will detract from what's this really nice kind of hex grid here. I really like that idea. I love the fact that we've got like this keep, which is covering the whole region. That's really starting to come together now. Yeah, that's really, really cool.
I like it. I like the white on black. That's doable.
Okay, well, let's flip the rest of them round. So we've got that as our kind of point of reference. And again, because I'm just making this in Photoshop, it's not a huge deal to change this down the line. Obviously, we don't want to be doing it to all of them at a late stage, but you know, you can go away and sit on this, think about it for a little bit, and decide what you think.
Yeah, I'm going to probably spend the next week or two remaking all the hex maps and doing them in Photoshop and adding labels. So I'm sure I'll tweak it a bit. But I really like the idea of keeping the theme with the black hex in the text and then the black hex on the map.
Yeah,
it's a good link.
Where to go after this, and oops. Cool. And save that. That. Again, like we talked about the other week, like there isn't an easy way that I know of saving your PSD file in the cloud, like to link InDesign to Google Drive or Dropbox or something, because that'd be really cool. I mean, I guess technically there is, right? If we share a Dropbox folder, then and we have a PSD that we can both access in that. If you were to change that PSD, the next time I'd open up InDesign, it would show that that file had changed. So we could even start to get to the stage where like you're building PSDs, you're editing them, and as I load back into InDesign over the course of the week, I'm seeing the updates. I can just, because there is a way of like updating all. I'm doing it on like an image by image basis, but it's in the links here. This is the list of all the links for various things. So we could move away from Google Drive, because I don't think you can do it in Google Drive easily. Google Drive doesn't actually have the files on your computer. It just makes kind of Google links to them, I think.
So Google Drive, you can install the client and have your files local.
You can, yeah, you can do that with images as well. Because if you have like a document, if you have like a Google Doc, like that plan pitch document, that just starts up Google Docs, right? It doesn't like open it in OpenOffice or Word or whatever.
But if you open up, I think I have some Photoshop files in there. If you had that locally, you could open.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, well, let's try that then. Well, in that case,
you just have to install the Google Drive client.
Okay, I'll have a go with that. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that keep PSD that I've just made, and I'm going to put it in the Google Drive folder. I'm going to just throw it in the images. I'm going to make a new folder within images. I'm going to call it Hex Maps PSDs.
Yep, and I'll put all the final PSDs
and then,
in there.
Yeah. Drop files in there. Come here, you. Ugh. Too many. Go. Hopefully it's not too big. Imagine how big that file is. But it's like 19 meg. Wow. That's bigger than I expected, but that's good. Again, like, it doesn't matter. Bigger the better. It means we've got way more options for having these as easy downloads, which we wanted to have from the beginning.
Yeah, and the reason I use Google Drive is because I've got 200 gigs of space.
Oh, cool. Okay.
A little more room to put in giant Photoshop stuff.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Okay, well, let me add that to the notes. I will start adding my completed Photoshops, or at least in progress Photoshops, to that folder, and you can grab them from there.
Yeah, nice. I'll sort out getting Google Drive synced to my computer. Hell, I can install the Google Drive client inside my Dropbox, so I can have my cake and eat it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's clouds all the way down, man.
That's right.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do something like that. It doesn't matter. Why is this sunken keep? Oh, I'll have to go back over that a little bit.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Then you can see the updates as I add them.
Yeah. And they can all be PSDs. So we've worked through how we're doing for time. We're cracking on a little bit now, aren't we?
I've got to head out soon.
All right. Is there anything else you want to see in particular? Any particular sections you want me to kind of shove in now, which we can work around, or anything you want to kind of work on? I would say that going back to the beginning, there's our first page. That's better. Content's fine, whatever. Joy of getting lost, that's fine. There's our nave content, looking really nice now. There's those fire changes, by the way, looking really nice over here. Nice and neat. So that's all good. Character creation is a little bit funny at the moment. Like, we've got, this is probably the best way to put this, and we've got this blank space down here, but this might be where we reuse some of the nice illustrations, like an adventurer's pack. I know we've got that knocking around, so that might fill the space in the bottom left.
Yeah.
This on the bottom right's a bit weird, but it is repeated on the gear and then the appearance. 50 spells. Then we've got Asmex Flyer. Then we've got Welcome to the Marshes. We've got these pages here, which are coming together. They're coming together a bit. They're a bit kind of bitty, but
yeah, it's a shame that part one's the longest one and it's right after the beginning.
Yeah, we kind of want, and we want Azimek's flyer next to part 1. Really, I've got to play around with that. Yeah, that's I've got to play around with that a little bit, but I've got a whole extra page of worth of space to fiddle with.
It's looking good, Joe.
Yeah, it's going nicely. You come here.
Yeah, I will get you those images, and let's see. Is there an order you want me to get them to you? Maybe we can synchronize.
Other than I don't want to do that. Actually, I've broken everything. That's better. No, other than how they are going to appear, the hex kit ones we've got. To be absolutely clear, we've got one for each, haven't we? One for each of these major regions.
Yep.
So forests, wetlands, brambles.
I've got a list here.
Yeah.
Forest, brambles, wetlands, pluff, meadows, and then safe paths, which is I need to redo.
Sure. So already we're starting to push that down, but that's okay because that's easy to move. Sunken Keep goes there. Bit of room knocking around there. Sunken Keep goes there. Central Spire goes there. Mud Pit goes probably next page down. Now we're starting to take up too many pages, you see. We've already started creeping up. But it is good to break this up a little bit to get a sense of where all this stuff is going to go.
Yeah, where are we on page count out of just general?
You can see, I'm still sharing InDesign. You can see it in the bottom right. Do you see down the bottom right here? Is that clear enough? So
yeah,
we've creeped up to, in pushing all of these to individual pages, it started to creep up to the 50s. But that's okay because not all of, in fact, that is, first of all, we had some blank pages added in anyway, which are now going to be removed. So 45, 46, 47. So we are back down to, yeah. So very, very early days yet. This is definitely not set in stone. However, if I am to go back to the regions section, right? And then we're looking at like forest is there, wetlands is there, brambles and pluffs are there. Pluffs continues to there. Meadow is there. Sunken Keep is there. But then you've got Meadow and Sunken Keep kind of leading to each other anyway, don't they?
The meadows contain the Sunken Keep and the Spire.
Yeah. So the Sunken Keep and the Central Spire there could, in theory, all lead into one another, which would save us a few pages. That notwithstanding, then the Mud Pit is there. The Lava Maze is there. The Vault follows on from the Lava Maze kind of directly anyway.
Yep.
And then that is it. That is the end of the book as written there. So you can see that we're starting, notwithstanding pulling out a couple of these pages to have another, I feel like we kind of need another full page image somewhere in the hexes. We definitely need, I mean, really what we need actually, I'm going to put it in now because I think it's pretty vital, is the main thing we're missing is a nice big picture of the map. Just the whole hex map needs to be reprinted here. Well,
what I was thinking is we would include the schedule. So here, I don't.
Yes.
This is the rough draft, but you can see the rotation.
Yeah, I'm going to put in the mid. That's your midday, isn't it? So we'll use that as our default. I agree. We should have them in the rotation, but for the sake of having one large image, for the moment, I have no idea what that even means. So whatever. Let's throw in Marshes midday. Throw that there. Cool. Make that smaller. Align that to the center of the page. Smaller still. Go on, in you go. There we go. Boom. Yep. That needs to be, so we could even have like that, and then we could have underneath, I'm just going to use this one as the example. Have some tiny ones for
the rotation,
right? For the rotation. So it's like this is midday, but 4 a.m. Was it 4? It's every 4 hours, isn't it? So 4, 8, 12, 16, 18. Have I got that many right?
Yep, 6.
Am I mathing correctly? Yeah.
Yep.
So you'd have 6. And you'd have these two aligned to the margins and have that on the left. And these two aligned to the margins, have that on the right. You'd have these two in the center.
Yep.
So we've got a bit, yeah.
Cleaner than the weird circle thing I made before.
What, the animated GIF?
No, I made a diagram for one of the handouts.
Oh, that. Well, this is another way of doing it. I mean, again, the end of the world, is it? Either way.
I like that. And then we can put
pretty cool
labels.
Yeah, we've got enough room to put some. Look, you can imagine the captions going, say, underneath them.
Yep.
That's about enough room.
Yep, I can see that.
We probably have an additional caption or a bit of content there, so we probably pull that back up to something like that. That quite nicely highlights the regions in your travel there.
I love it, Joe.
Yeah, so that's starting to come together now. We've got the regions there. Oh, and something else in InDesign which is relatively easy to do is if I want to change this image, if I want to change what this particular image is linked to, i.e. the 4 a.m. one. So if I now download the 4 a.m. one and add it in there, all I need to do is change the link like that, and it retains all the data. So it's very, very easy for me to swap images which are the same sort of dimensions and general content, which is why I don't feel bad about copying and pasting all of this. So that's super, super easy. This is, yeah, that's pretty good. I'm feeling pretty happy about that. That probably needs to flip to there. Yep. Yeah. I have a challenge ahead of me, which is what to do about this table here, but that's for another day, I think. I feel like I want to pull this table out and make more of a thing of it, but I want to make more of a map first. That's the greater priority out of these two things. And I don't know how I don't know what I want to do about that at the moment. I need to think about that. But I'm happy with that. Oh, sick. Another cheeky orphan. There we are.
Yeah, the underground table here. Let me show you the quick flyer that I made.
Yeah, remind me. Where we at?
Where is that?
Is it in the flyers handouts? Was it in that?
Yeah, there you go.
Block? Yeah.
So again, super rough, but you can see we've got the above ground with some rules references, and then the underground has that table.
Yeah.
Underneath it.
I mean, the thing also, I think something which is worth, because you're using these handouts, you've used these in your playtesting, haven't you?
And I'm designing them around feedback and usefulness. So
yeah. So, like, you know, graphics notwithstanding, what should really trump everything is what's worked at the table for you, because the playtesting tends to be paramount. So it's like we can drill down and be like, oh, this is quite a nice layout, but actually what tends to be the case is, well, let's start with what's worked at the table first. So actually what I should do is go back to the flyers handout stock and use that as my starting point for how we're going to reference it here. It's double bubble as well, because if like the flyer handout, which will probably be like a little PDF download or something, matches pretty accurately what's going on in the book proper, then it's like, oh right, yeah, of course, that thing looks exactly like this thing. I remember now. It's another thing to help jar your memory as and when you need it in play. So yeah, I'm keen to do that. I am keen to keep a large map in kind of pride and place. I'm very aware that's sort of missing right now, and I want to avoid that. But that notwithstanding, yeah, I want to, yeah, it needs to have some more of them in there. That's definitely the next step for me. What's that there? Yeah. And look, we've added one extra page somewhere, but that's okay. They'll start to keep sneaking in now. That's going to start happening. I think I told you before how InDesign, unless you set it otherwise, will start adding pages. And I still wanted to do that. I still want to maintain the flow of text. And we added these pages as a sort of buffer. So if these pages are just these blank pages being deleted, I'm happy with that. It's like, cool, we're filling content.
Yep.
So yeah, we're coming to sort of a much more of an idea of how much everything's filling up now, which is good. Yeah. Okay, cool. Anything else you want to see before we sign off? I know we're coming near to the end now.
I'm really happy with it. I'm looking forward to redoing a lot of the maps. As a personal project of mine, I think that'll be really fun to help refine that look and make the hexes look more clean and uniform.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. I having that now in mind of like how they're going to start fitting in gives you a bit more context, doesn't it?
And Alex said he'll have some teasers for the images that he's working on within the next couple days, so we'll be able to get a sneak peek at that soon too.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I'm going to come back to the screen. Yeah, the sooner we get those, the better. I'm happy with that. Yeah, awesome. And otherwise, I'm just sort of cracking on with what we've got here, and yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how it's coming along.
It's looking good, Joe. You're doing great.
Yeah. Okay, good. So let me see. This time, generally, I've got my calendar on me. In terms of general stuff, I don't think I'm around next Sunday to do another one of these, but I will be around.
I'll stop the broadcast and we can work out the schedule.
All right, yeah, let's sort all that out now. Anyway, for now, that's good. Yeah, good stuff.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks,
Joe.
Joe.
Also, just going to throw in, I hope this is useful for people watching either now or before. Do let me and or David know like what's working, what's not. I think it's really useful in terms of like, because we're working and the work is the priority and we're streaming it as a usability. So like the work is the priority part. But that being said, if there are elements which people want to see more of, especially if you've already backed Bone Marshes or it's something you're really interested in picking up ASAP, and you want to see some certain aspects here and now, let us know. And that can be the topic for like a mini stream or something we kind of document as a blog or whatever.
Yeah, I would love to turn this into some additional content for people to enjoy and benefit from with their own projects and their own work.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Cool.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
No worries.
Bye.